I'm Keith Marchiano. Welcome to Results Selling Framework Podcast. I'm a senior executive coach here at PAX 8, working with partners mostly around the idea of helping them sell better. Selling security solutions is not an excuse to fall into the commodity trap. What is the commodity trap? It's talking about our cyber tools and the solutions we have without even establishing if the prospect cares about them in the first place, or even if your client cares about them in the first place. Do they value protecting their business? Look, we get excited to discuss all the great protections our cybersecurity tools do. But don't forget the one thing, the buyer. Do they care about it? Is it something that pertains to them? Do they have issues that they need to solve? Asking good questions to find those things out is the key to all of this. Folks, I've done a whopping 10 podcasts here at PAX 8 for Results Selling Framework. So today I am joined by PAX 8 royalty when it comes to delivering podcasts, Matt Lee. Matt, welcome to Results Selling Framework Podcast.
No, man, this thing looks so big in here. It's awesome. I'm excited. Lots of room to grow. Lots of room to grow. No, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
No, and it's cybersecurity month, and being in the MSP world, it was something that really I cared about and wanted to kind of communicate my expertise to my partners. First when I was told that, hey, put something together on the podcast around cybersecurity, I've really been talking about results selling framework, and is like the buyer's idea of like, okay, who cares, right? Do I actually care about this? And us as IT providers, we absolutely care, right? It's our job to protect our clients. So I was like, who are we bringing here? I'm like, I got to bring Matt, and Matt's got to be on the show. There's not too many people in the industry that know as much about cyber and actually selling it to clients as you. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, man, thank you. And selling it, I don't know if I'm the best at that. I will say I was really good at prescribing it. And I was really good at making it be purchased. As far as selling, I would actually delineate that I don't know that I was the best at it. But we'll see how that goes as we continue. So.
Yeah, I had a sales trainer. He's kind of a mentor to me back in the day. He said, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. So something that's always stuck in my head, and that's really what sales is.
Yeah, it's fair. That's fair. No, it's a great look at it, man. I appreciate you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So for anybody out there that might actually not know who you are, Matt, can you give them a quick intro about who you are and maybe a fun fact about yourself?
Sure. I'll start with the fun fact. I've probably been on, I would bet it's north of 3,000 or so different recordings or presentations or stage things that I've been involved in now. And I will say that of all the things I've done, of all the content I've made, none of my cybersecurity content has made it to this viral level that I find myself at. So if you don't know, I've actually had a viral video. It's now at almost 14 million views in the last 10 days or so,
Whoa.
12 days or so. And it is of my 3 German Shepherds jumping into the engine bay of my Subaru instead of the back of my Jeep. And it has gotten 13-something million, 14-something million views. So that's the strange fact, is that my cyber videos are trash and my dog videos are amazing and on point.
Everybody loves dogs. Nobody wants to get hit by a cyber attack, but everybody loves a good dog.
That's right. But, so a little bit about me. I actually am a recovering managed service provider, much in the same way you are. I spent 11 years in a small managed service provider that grew from a break-fix provider in the late 2000s to becoming, when I joined on, now down the MSP train, seats on a bus, right, SLI, growing from 1 million to 3 million to 5 million to 7 million, merging with 3 peers to be about 20-ish million, 26, 27 million, and then growing that organically and through acquisition from 26 million to about 40 million in revenue, and exiting successfully at 14 times EBITDA about 3.5 years ago or so. So during that time, though, I was the director of security as we merged entities, and in my own entity at that $7 million range as an MSP as well. But as we merged entities, I was the director of security, comma, space, and technology. And I was at the helm when we bought a company I call Voldemort, because I will never say their name again. And we lost $3 million to Sotonokibi, or our evil ransomware gang, in total economic impact, right? We had not as much out in actual ransoms, but overall, we lost all the revenue. Every client fired us. Every employee of that company we bought quit. We ended up getting settlements and insurance settlements. We had a $1.28 million insurance claim, and about $1 million of that was not paid. So we could have bought a good company that was not a turd for that same $1 million. And add insult to injury, we had to write a $500,000 check to the owner during the incident. So what that did, Keith, was just drive me down this path of knowing that we needed to build a very secure internal capability inside of our organization at 28 million and up. And we built and took away rights. And I came to my techs and said, hey, I'm taking away local admin rights, and I'm not going to let you write scripts. And there's going to have to be a team that does that. And that drove us to change internally. And I know that's not what we're here to talk about today, Keith, but my world has come from that understanding of how hard that is to implement, which if any MSP is going through that process today, we'll start to understand how they might implement and what they might implement. And back to your point, there is no diagnosis without any type of consultation. It would be malpractice. A lot of these things are the basic things like thou shalt drink water and thou shalt breathe air. And some of those don't need much diagnosis for that species. But yeah, so my background's in MSP, and taking one on the chin seems to have been my specialty, drive, and what drives my mission. So,
That's a great why, right? That's like, it's one of the things I typically ask is like, why?
yeah. Well,
nothing makes you more passionate about it except for writing a check to solve it, right?
Well, you nailed it, though, with this question of why. One of the things you wanted to ask me was, why, to your point of why am I doing this? And it really is, and I think you've honed in on it. As I was going through that process, and I was starting to add SSO to all of our products, right? So we wanted to take everything that we used as a tool inside of our organization and go to single sign-on. Instead of having passwords, we wanted to sign on through our identity provider. As we went down this path, there's a page called sso.tax, sso.tax. And that page tells you everybody that takes their price from $100 to $13,000 when you ask for enterprise-type functions like SSO. And so it's called the Wall of Shame. And the point is that through that process, as I talked to these vendors that every one of you listening today use every day, I was horrified at how little they were willing to meet me at the level of security I needed just in their platform. And then as I started digging into how they secure themselves and all of those things, I started realizing we're really in a lot of trouble right now, right? We're really in a lot of trouble. Everybody's got trash. Everybody's built tech debt. Nobody's dealt with security first. In fact, even as you think about it, Keith, security was a tool you sold to somebody, not something that you do in a function and a way of life and things that we must change and all that history of things that has been not secure that has to be cleaned up, especially as a vendor. So anyways, that's the why is as I went through that process, I was just so beat down by, imagine if you didn't know the things I know, how hard this would be to see how bad it is, if that makes sense. And so my goal is to try to change that over time.
Yeah, I think it's, you look, from a standpoint, why I'm doing sales podcast. It's just all these years of experience to get it out there and give it back to the community, 100%. So that way they don't have as many scars as we do when they get done, right?
Exactly. Rode hard, put up wet won't have to come in their lexicon, right? Like at some point, maybe that's a Southern euphemism.
So what are from a standpoint of from trend standpoint for IT service providers in the cybersecurity market, like you said, there's plenty of tools out there, but really from a standpoint of trends that they should be focusing on to protect not only themselves but the partner. What are you seeing out there that you would recommend to the audience?
Why do they sell ephedra, Keith? Why have they sold FinFin? Why did they sell Ozempic? Why do they sell the bariatric surgery? Why are those things that are pushed and marketed, Keith? Just what do you think's a commonality in those?
Well, there's some sort of ailment that's got to be cured on the other end, or at least trying to.
I think that ailment is actually laziness. And what I mean by that is oftentimes people are looking for that quick out. I want a diet pill. Well, eat right and exercise, right? And people want that easy out. And so when you say, what are the trends? Right now, everybody is thinking the easy out or that next big thing or, oh my God, AI is going to destroy us or AI is going to save us, depending on which way you threw the flag in that particular choice. But in reality, if we would just make the bed in the morning, if we would just make sure that we're actually doing the things we need to be doing at a cybersecurity level, and I will get out of this rhetoric and into actual specific examples, but if we would do those basic things, then actually all the advanced stuff doesn't even matter. It's the basics that people die on, right? Cisco got popped because they let somebody sync a password to their home Google account in their browser. They didn't control the browser. These are basic things. So when we talk about this, just to set the stage of where we are, I think when it comes to trends, what are trends that people should be aware of? One trend is that there is some component of security that is crap that you should have already been doing. Having a list of what assets should be connecting, having an updated understanding of what operating systems are on it, understanding what software people are using, understanding what data is and where it's at and what it's worth and what the regulatory impacts are is something that needs to be done. These are basics that we have been calling our IT white glove hands service stuff and not doing. What assets do we track? The ones that went in our RMM that I could bill for. What things did we deal with from a users and identities? The ones people called in and complained about. What data did we deal with? None. Not my problem, bro. I'll just hook you up to the file. Y'all figure it out. So you have this like basic piece aspects as a trend that we're starting to realize that there is stuff that we've been promising to do, or have at least not been excluding of things we should do, that are part of securing products and services. That's straight up the answer, straight up. There's a problem there. The second trend that comes with that is that easy button, and it's maybe a tangential trend to the first. Because of all these things that we have to do, we're looking for the easy button. And what's interesting is, as MSPs, you've seen us do this before. When we first went from break fix to RMM to PSA to tracking KPIs, all of that stuff, some jackass came up to us and said, I'll help you with the easy button, Keith. You can get your RMM in spot in 3 days and you're fine. And it never worked any more than the snake oil of any other snake oil in 3 days. But as we hit that curve as MSPs, we got to a point where we dug in. We started building up RMMs. Think back to your old world. Like, we got efficient. We got good at automating things. We got good at scaling things. We had better documentation. We got more efficient. I could track a KPI of your reactive hours per endpoint per month and determine whether I was doing the right stuff on the front end with my TAMs and the right stuff with, right? Like, so the second trend is that a lot of the stuff that we've had to do before, we're about to have to apply again to security. How does an asset get born? How does my asset get these things done to it so it's secured? How do I push back against the client so they do the things we're supposed to do? And to your point, let's get into the commoditization, which is the third trend. The third trend is that we right now, in our worlds as MSPs, in my opinion, especially getting into selling, we have less value than we used to. What I mean by that is, when I first took my first 3 clients back in 2016, 17, 18 timeframe, I think it was in that timeframe, that we converted to Azure Active Directory, Intune management, like literally no servers, everything just works for these clients. They ship a laptop to Sally and she signs in and everything's functional. That was our world. And when I converted people to that, they fired me. And I said, why are you firing me? Well, Matt, everything works. I can't justify $290 a seat anymore. And this was before security became the challenges. So what I'm saying is, I feel like if you've ever run an Exchange server and what it took to run an Exchange server, the right speeds of disk, the right partitioning, the right OSs, the right update process, the methodologies to manage it, HA, let alone your actual access, DDoS prevention, all the things. And now I buy a $20 license from Microsoft, or $28 if I'm dating myself, right? I now have that versus this. That's commoditization, my friend. Like, in the work we said we were doing of making that Exchange server happen, we have not changed our prices materially to now manage a $20 license that's automatic. So what's happening? We're getting commoditized. Our value's dropping. How we sell that seat price has had downward pressure on those things. And we're backfilling it with stuff that we're trying to convince the client to buy to get them back to where they were. Like, please buy this EDR, it'll solve it. No, you need to figure out how that's part of that prescriptive package and what you're doing and how that shift is there, and need to make sure that you understand your, anyways. So the point is that we're in these phases where we found out it's much harder than we thought we had in that first theme. Like, what do you mean 10.1 that says deploy anti-malware means your endpoints, your servers, your network, your IoT, your mobile, your portable, your non-compute devices, things that might communicate. All of that is in that device asset class we're talking about when you're talking about deploying CIS 10.1. And when you start making that realization, you say, this doesn't make sense. How am I going to accomplish this? You're already being commoditized with things in the past. As people are now working with these new modern tools, the commoditization has played out to where if I fire up Angry Birds 100 times out of 100, it fires up. Same thing when I launch my teams, for the most part, it fires up. Right? And so when you get into that position, we're not worth very much, and we're having to backfill that. And I would argue that it's the being deeper in their cybersecurity awareness and in the data and the breadth of those things that's going to be part of what backfills that. And the other piece will be what you coach a lot, which is being deeper in their business, more aware of what it takes, listening to them and how they make money and how you can help them make money and what you need to do to protect that money, right? Because that's what they care about. So I'll stop for a second, let you get a breath in, but yeah.
No, that's fantastic. That's all so relevant, perfect pointed with our clients, right? The MSPs out there with this availability to them now, these resources. Like, let's put ourselves in the buyer's shoes.
Sure.
Obviously, if one of our clients or a prospect has had a cyber incident of some sort, there's an urgent need and probably a higher demand for, the IT partner to sell them something, some sort of security solution to them. What's the advice to our partners that are listening that are talking to small, mid-sized company that hasn't had an incident or a breach yet? What's the direction of the conversation? How should that go?
That's tough, right? One of the challenges we face in our world that we don't face anywhere else in the professional services world, in my opinion, is that my CPA spends zero time helping me understand why she decided to fill out the 600 forms at $300 an hour for me and my taxes. I just kind of trust her at some point, or I don't, and I fire her and get another one. Same thing with my attorney. I could literally hire Saul Goodman, and he would actually be above the bar of the worst attorneys in the world. Like, they cut a bar. This is the bar. Saul Goodman, everybody else, right? So what I'm getting at is there's not many other practices where I'm actually having to come and try to convince you of something to buy. I am trusted, Artie, or you wouldn't be here standing talking to me. I think there is a value in becoming more holistic about this so that you are seen as that prescriber. You aren't trying to sell things. You are being holistic and saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do, right? And I'll get into maybe a successful strategy, but what I would try to set the expectation is that we are in an industry that is going to change a lot, especially over the next 20 or 30 years. And from the perspective of what I need to establish with you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, is what assets do you have? What do you need to protect, right? First off, to your point, do they have anything worth protecting? Am I at least prescribing to the right direction? And then, if so, how do we discuss what the risk tolerance looks like for things that you cannot understand? And that's a challenge, isn't it? So what I would see that successful MSPs start doing is saying, no, I'm going to get really linear in what I do. There are certain native things that I can do in either packages or in an H1H2 type mechanism of a certain stack that I know everybody needs. Now, there's some one-off things I might need above that, but let's say we're at that baseline. If you were that holistic and approached it that way, and then started setting expectations that Mr. or Mrs. Client, these are the things I need to support you now. As the threats change, as the landscape changes, as I have to do more, let's just get on a cadence where we get ahead of it, just like you do everything else. And I do like this thought of talking about the business, and here's what I mean. If I'm talking to a concrete manufacturer, someone that lays roads in the Midwest, let's say, and I asked that guy, I said, how do you make money? Which I do love that you started with that. And he says, Matt, I have to get concrete every 30 minutes to a job site contiguously for the entire pour and have the right amount of ash and concrete and cement and liquid and aggregate rolled in a bucket at the right time to meet that 30-minute for the contiguous pour of no matter how many trucks that might be. Is it 50? Is it 12? Is it 170? Right? He said, that's how I make money. I said, okay, how do you make sure that those trucks get there? Like, how do you stay resilient so if you have failures? He's like, easy. I have extra drivers on staff at all times, just sitting in a waiting room, right, to just catch up. I have extra trucks. We eventually built a shop. I actually do my own mechanic work so I can control the cost and throughput based on job worth and value. He said, I have multiple ash plants. I actually can go get ash and aggregate from 2 different sides of the city in case we have challenges. In fact, I even have overlap with a guy in the city 3 hours away that if I need to, I can get 4 of my extra trucks. Great. What happens and what all happens to get that truck where it needs to go? He says, well, we schedule it in this system. Great. What if that system goes down? Oh my gosh, I couldn't deal with it. Wonderful. What do you do to make sure you have a second one? Have you practiced paper methodologies? Are you continuing those things so that you could still function or not? No. Why do you not apply the same level of understanding and resiliency that you do to the rest of your business? All the other things you can physically see and touch. You can see a broken shaft for a drive shaft. You can see a truck driver sick and not show up. You can see a job not get poured and get a $2 million lawsuit. You can see all those things. Yet, when it comes to that thing you can't see, it's easy to say, well, don't worry, my MSP is handling it. Let's start with that conversation. Let's talk about resiliency, what systems matter, what things matter in my business. And then let's talk about what those things are from a risk tolerance perspective. Like if you're talking to the guy or gal that doesn't even build the shop or doesn't have a separate concrete truck, they're probably going to roll dirty as hell on their cyber problem too, right? But if you are talking to somebody that's down that path, help them understand the value of doing the same things they've done to protect those non-digital assets for their digital assets and for their digital world, and help them understand. The best I think you could do is by helping them understand without necessarily trying to educate them. I think you said it in the beginning. They don't know about your tools. They don't give a crap about my flux capacitor. That's a real thing in cyber, right? They don't care about those things. So you have to take it into business function. You have to take it into operation. And sometimes you have to maybe even lay it on the line and say, listen, these are the components that I'm not going to teach you about. Like, let's think how dumb this is. Okay, LLM&R poisoning. That's a tactic we're going to have to deal with. Okay, let me make sure you understand what LLM&R is. Hold on. So LLM&R is a lookup if normal DNS fails. Hold on. So DNS is domain naming systems. DNS is actually over protocol UDP. Wait, shit. Hold on. UDP. UDP is user datagram protocol, and it actually is a protocol that does... So now we got to get... Okay, so layer 1 gets into... Holy Jesus. None. Right? And so you're in this point where it's so hyperbolous to try to teach them. So you have to get to a point where you're like, listen, at some point you're going to have to trust me. And now I'm going to bring it back to what I started with. I love seeing MSPs that cadence their plans and say, here's my stack for H1 for 2024 half one. Mr. and Mrs. Client, I'm going to come to you with H2's stack and the changes based on what threat actors are doing, what I have to do, what other tools we need, what regulatory changes, what changed in your environment. And if you don't shift to H2, that's fine. H1 next year, that's fine. But if you get 3 behind, you're self-selectively quitting my business. You're starting to put this now into this kind of more rhythmic and less sales. Like I don't get sold to by Verizon. I get a notice that my Verizon policy is going to expire and I've got to buy the next one. And at some point you have to get that trust. And I've been a little hyperbolous on this, but I really think it has to get down to helping the client and partner understand that this is just like everything else that delivers business and money in their world, and that you've hired a professional to do it. And if you don't trust me and want me to educate you those things, we don't have to do business either. Right? And I don't know that I have to chase everybody to make them live. And this goes back to someone asked me once, Matt, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. No, but I can drown that guy right here and know that I don't have to get stranded in the desert where I might die. I can choose that. And I think that's the point is if we continue this forward far enough, Keith, people that choose not to do the basics and get to some bell curve of what normal security is and understanding their world just don't have to be in business in 10 years. Right? And that means if you are, you're betting on the loser if you're always continuously hat in hand trying to sell to them. Okay. Probably broken the whole concept of what you wanted to talk about today.
No.
Yeah.
This is beautiful. This, like, from a standpoint, like, you made the point without me having to make it is, get away from talking about the technical side and the acronyms that you have to define. Get to know who they are, because they're going to buy from you because they know, like, and trust you.
Yeah, man.
Right? Not because you've got a huge PhD in cybersecurity and know every acronym in the book. Yep. To talk over their head. And for the IT providers out there listening, this is just a wealth of knowledge. Just a great example Matt gave around cement company. That's real world. Get to know your client's business. Not only what's ailing them, but really how they make money and how they can lose money is a big part. Trying to give you a little chance to catch your breath before I hit you with the next question.
I never need it, brother. I've always got extra, I promise.
Yeah. No, but that's it's the key is like this all started with the question like, what if they don't care about it, or they've never experienced the issue? They may not want it. Like if you go back, a decade ago, and we're trying to sell cloud services. Like, hey, why do I need the cloud? Everything's working fine right now. Why do I need to not have control of my servers and systems? Really wasn't about where the servers were. It was all about the efficiency of the business, being able to work from everywhere, expand your employee base from being in your geography to hiring talent outside because your systems were
Yep, you
accessible
nailed
in the
it.
cloud,
Look
right?
at the have and have nots during COVID, right? And to your point, those features and values only came when something was positive to be had because they were able to move forward, right? And that's tough. So you really nailed it. You've got to focus on the positive side of things as well as that don't get down into the weeds, right? Like, it does need to be like, what's the benefit of me doing this? It was great. There was a Starbucks tabletop. The CISO of Starbucks led a tabletop for CISOs that I was lucky enough to participate in as an invite thing in Washington. And when we sat down with the guy, he was talking about how when he got FIDO tokens approved for his organization for all the baristas, right? So something using a FIDO protocol, a smart card or something. He didn't get it based on the security benefits. Like, it was phishing resistant, it was harder to steal, it was more one-to-one, it was more locals, like all the things, right? I didn't have to use my cell phone anymore as an employee if I was having to get dual authentication. Like, none of that stuff happened anymore. He didn't win on that argument. He won on the argument that, hey, guess what? A barista can now walk up to this terminal and within 15 to 30 seconds faster than they would have through a traditional sign-in means be serving coffee. That's it. Like, that is an argument at 15,000 stores that the money was worth spending it from an ROI perspective. So to your point, like, it's about focusing on those positives and how can I make sure your concrete trucks get there? How can I help you be more resilient to the things that might happen in your world around your concrete trucks? And to your point, those that sold cloud servers back in the IaaS cloud virtualization push, right, for legacy business applications, you saw those that had that benefit and capability be able to benefit in the ways you talked about. And the ones that sold it the best, in my opinion, were the ones that sold it that way. Let me help you be more resilient. Let me help you be better protected, better firewall, better hardware, better redundancy, extra capabilities to spin up, better recovery capabilities. Like, all of that stuff is hard to quantify when you're just saying, well, how much should I spend on that server and how much is it worth in the next 4 years on my amortization and that.
Yeah, this is all good. This is just keep on the conversation is, simple things. I mean, you go back again a decade ago, the cybersecurity insurance policy was a whopping 2 to 3 pages. You know, right now it's
Or a checkbox
and now
and
it's
a signature.
like a
right?
dozen
Like that for a
pages
long
and
time.
then an annual review.
17
Why
pages,
is that?
yeah.
Because it's become more relevant. So again, for
Yeah, and the understanding's getting broader. Like, it's a lot of things, but not easy to simplify. But it's definitely getting broader, more attacked, more money to be made, growth in that industry, in what it is stealing from us in general. So, I mean, if you'd thought about prior to 2017, other than Emotet or a couple of like maybe banking Trojans that ran around, there really wasn't a massive amount of egress to the general SMB populace that the MSP serves. It was very little, at least in my world. You go to 2019, and there's a great image for this. There's Information is Beautiful is a site you can search for, and search for Information is Beautiful, World's Largest Breaches. And that site will show, and I love showing my partners this, and their client partners, is here's what it looked like 8 years ago, like little tiny dots never touching each other. Now it is just covered up like every single second. So to your point, like, it's getting broader. We're understanding it better as an insurance because they're taking the loss. Businesses are taking the loss and closing. MSPs are being forced to change into different things that they weren't before. Like, most MSPs got started, Keith, because they wanted to make something beautiful. They wanted to make a sandcastle. It was so cool that made their client happy and drove their business to success. And now they're like, wait, there's some dude kicking sandcastles out here? Like, this is crap.
and
Now
they
there's
don't have to
40 of
physically
them?
do it. They've automated it, right?
I digress. Yeah, they can just be remote. They just go, and it just blows it down remotely. Yeah.
So in my intro, here's where partners get kind of stuck, right? You kind of did it in your example, but they get stuck in the commodity trap, talking about the technology.
Trying to sell on features, trying to sell on this, like, do you understand this has an auto close window over here? It will automatically remediate EDR to MDR activities, and yeah, yes.
So how should our MSPs control their urge to talk about what the solution does and the solutions themselves and focus on it? Besides what you kind of talked about besides getting to know the client's business itself, which is very vital.
I think, and this is something I've done personally for many, many years, which is apply a framework. Why do you want to be the smartest guy or gal in the room, right? Like, if you're coming in there and saying, let me educate you on this EDR, and I'm going to teach you about it, and this is why we need to sell you Sentinel-1, and we're going to use Complete because it's this feature, and gives, versus, hey, this year, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I've realized this thing's so broad, and it's bigger than me, and just like doctors have to have the AMA and all these things, we as an industry have started adopting frameworks, and these frameworks tell us kind of those things we got to do based on where you sit and where your risk is. And so what I'm going to be doing now is analyzing the things that I already give you as part of my world and what I do for you. But we're going to start looking at those gaps of the things that I know need to be done that we haven't done up to this point. And we're now at a point where, Keith, what we're doing is we want to see those gaps. We're going to come back to you and help you understand what stuff for us to pay for as new services. What are those things you're going to be okay just ignoring? And what are those things that are within that risk profile for you as a business? Okay, and I'm going to make some good suggestions. Now, what am I doing? I'm now, instead of talking about Sentinel-1 and me having to sell you on why an EDR, I'm going, hey, we noticed on our list that we had these 37 things we're not doing right now. One of those was an EDR. I don't want to teach you what that is, but it's 10.1, and that's what we need to do. How do we want to tackle that? This quarter or next quarter? I actually have this in the new package we're doing. We can actually knock out 14 more of these for you. If you bring it to count and bring it to data that has backing that you're not making up, you now have something that's legitimizing what you're saying. You're tying it to something and saying, if you want to go dig in, go dig in. But instead, we were just coming up with these like things. I was like, this is a wiggle woggle. And this wiggle woggle checks for passwords on the Blark or Blark web and looks to make sure your wiggle woggles haven't, like, we make it up. If I at least now say it's something I'm following as a prescriptive framework that might get you a benefit on your insurance. If you're in the state of Ohio, this will actually help your business have some safe harbor protections in case you do get sued from an incident. We're going to be following that. And this is your checkbox that says your gap right here, right now. Oh, by the way, an H2 package, you can't skip this one. I'm adding that in. You see what I mean about that being prescriptive and now not making it a sales discussion? It's literally just these are the bare minimums that I and my clients are willing to accept as a risk profile. If you're looking for somebody else, Saul Goodman will take way bigger chances on that attorney deal than if you hired Fred Levin. Straight up. You'll get a very different result. Maybe somebody gets kneecapped in the desert. But it's a different risk profile. And I think that's the point we're going to start seeing is that as the risk shifts to MSPs, right? There's been an MSP that was sued in a subrogation action for their SLAs promised to a client during an incident. Like, straight up, let's let that sink in. Now you're going to be sued by the insurance company that paid the client? Whoa. Okay, well, at some point you're going to go, sorry, client, just because you make shitty decisions with your health doesn't mean I need to have that. Like, why do they get real particular for astronauts? Because it would really suck to have my other astronaut die from something we should have caught on a regular health basis, right? So at some point, MSPs are going to start saying, client, you're too risky for me. If you're not willing to make these decisions, and I've met some of them, and they're flourishing, and they're doing well. And I believe if you took that even further forward, what I would definitely say to a client if I was in an MSP's shoes, definitely myself, and have said it before, is I would love to help you succeed, and I have the knowledge to help you do so. I'm following prescriptive advice. I'm getting better every day. We're all dealing with this change, and I'm going to try to do it for you in a way that's the most financially feasible and help you scale and grow your business. And if you don't have to survive as a business. There are bare minimum standards, and I like to do it with allegory, Keith. I love knowing that I can't teach people enough. I like to tell stories, right? And it's one of these things where one of the challenges that I've found that this story particularly helps with is this particular gap of needing to know a bunch of stuff but not understanding that we have to make change. If you look at the billions of deaths per billion miles traveled of a car since the beginning of the automobile in the late 1800s, there's a chart that showed that in the early times, like, people just died. Like, cars hit each other, poor manufacturing capabilities. Anybody could make a car in their garage. There were no regulatory standards. There was no safety discussion. In fact, there wasn't even a seatbelt invented until 1950 from 1897, right? And then nobody wore it until after Ralph Nader in 1965 wrote Unsafe at Any Speed. 1966, we now had the National Motor Vehicle Safety Act. And then NHTSA was formed, and we started saying brake lights need to be on both sides, and blinkers have to be different colors than the red so we can actually distinguish them, and the cars must stop in a certain distance. And all of those things combined to having the death per billions of miles traveled down 10% of where it was. Not 10% less, 10%, like 90% off of the top to where it is now, and we're acceptable there. I would like to explain to customers and partners, say, listen, you have lived with your technology in an era when there was no car manufacturer control, there was no safety elements. We're building all those in now. We're all having to build. We're in that same 80-year time frame from 1937 when the first digital computer existed till now. You're starting to see regulatory, you're starting to see civil lawsuits, you're starting to see quality, false claims acts, things that are driving the change. You as a client have a choice. You can either spend a little bit over time, get where you need to be, or you can let it slap you and decide if you still want to be in business after the change occurs. There are a lot of people that used to make cars that are no longer making cars. There are even more people that used to make steam engines that didn't transfer over to the internal combustion engine that are making nothing in the same breath. So the point is that capitalism always changes. This is yet that next thing that businesses have to wake up to as a debt, as a tech debt, that their competitors starting tomorrow won't face. What I mean by that is if I start a company tomorrow, Keith, there's zero chance I don't have myself without a server, all using SaaS applications, identity-centric, which means most of the tech debt that somebody else has, that client that I as an MSP am talking to, you know, that old server we're trying to get rid of, I know it's 2008 R2 and you got your money's worth out of it, but we really need to spend $1,400 and another $10,000 on the licensing and the server. At some point, you have to escape that mass, that debt, or your competitor will grow, will be more agile, just to the same point you made about cloud servers and what flexibility that brought. So does platform native and identity centric for a lot of small to mid-sized business, which will be hard for these guys and gals to get out of to win against their competitors. So my argument is, Mr. and Mrs. Client, our goal is to get modern from where we are, to start down the path of getting more secure than the guy running from the bear next to me. I don't have to get you way out front. I just have to get you ahead of the bear, and we're going to use frameworks to do it. Here's the changes we're going to make this quarter. H2 stack may change from there. Sign here. My point is that we've got to stop talking about the tech. Keith, you asked me how to not talk about the tech. Stop talking about the freaking tech. It doesn't matter. It's just the next scalpel we use. They're not like, hey, Keith, you need to get your knee repaired. And we're going to put in a new replacement knee. By the way, we're going to use a number 3 scalpel. I really want you to buy in on this. The number 3 scalpel comes in very nicely when it goes between the inside of the... We don't do that. They go, listen, I want to make your knee better. I know what it takes to make your knee better. If you don't like me as a surgeon, go to another surgeon, right? And then they do it. And I think that's where we're right now still being nerds that love the cool sandbox tools and haven't realized that we actually have to speak about the sandcastle. We have to speak about the positives we're trying to create and prevent and protect. So a little rhetorical, sorry, but.
Yeah, articulate the value of what you're doing, right? Metrics that matter to the buyer. And just tell stories around it, right? Tell stories, paint the picture on that side. To your point, and again, you know, from like last summer, I discovered like I had a wood deck. I have a really nice deck. I like to smoke a lot of meat. That's one interesting fact about me, Matt. I've got 4 grills.
I'm a fat boy that loves smoked meat. It's a match made in heaven.
I got 4 grills. I got 3 of them are smokers. Like I compete.
I only have 2.
It's
I'm a slacker.
Yeah, I've got an addiction over here. So, but I had a wood deck, and the boards were coming up. And I'm not very handy, but I can replace a board. But the problem came. I'm mowing the lawn, and the base, the foundation that was holding it up, was rotting at the ground. I had a safety issue. I knew I needed massive repair, if not replacement. I didn't ask, you know, I knew a guy. His daughter and my daughter played softball together, so I trusted him.
Sure.
You know, he posted on Facebook pictures of decks he's done. Did fantastic job. I know people that did that. He was the expert, right? That's the things you're talking about is
Yep.
Demonstrate some expertise. He didn't come out here, Matt, and talk to me kind of like you said with the scalpel and show me, hey, I've got the tools that I use.
We use these 12-inch lag bolts when we're on the 8x8s because, boy, howdy, they turn better in there than the... Exactly. He doesn't. He goes, here's a deck, and this is what it's going to cost.
That's right, yeah. Right? And it's going to be safe, and you can cook meat all day and drink your beer.
Yeah. It'll hold all your grills. You want 3 more grills, bro? I got you. And that is the point, right? He probably, if he was any good of a salesperson, spoke towards the benefits to you, which is, a place you can have your kids and grandkids, and as that daughter's getting married, y'all can have that out there and have all the grills, everybody stand on it and not worry if somebody's going to fall and get hurt, and have it look good at the same time. Is this kind of deck you want, Keith?
Exactly.
He didn't talk about boards or treatment or like, you know what I mean? Anyways, it goes back to that feature benefits conversation. You always want to be talking about benefits, not features. And often, and maybe that's the simplest way to TLDR this. If you're talking about the feature, like I now have EDR, versus the benefit of I have the ability to quickly respond and get something isolated so it doesn't go way across your network based on me following this very prescriptive framework. That may be all you have to say about it is I have the ability to do this and reduce the damage. All right, cool. Right? And maybe if you got into that deck situation, he might explain how he's got something that's treated down there so it wouldn't rot, or maybe did difference with the drainage and how he managed that so it wouldn't. Like, took your existing concern and made it part of what the fix was, right, in that sales conversation. Now, again, remember, I promised in the beginning I'm an engineer, not a sales guy, so give me a grain of salt on this one.
There you go.
Anyways, yeah.
So, last question for you, and then we can kind of start wrapping her up. Like, for the MSPs that are out there, the IT service providers that are like, I feel like I'm behind the game when it comes to having a cybersecurity front for the business. I know the value it provides. I know all these things. I've got the right mature, to your point, right mature client audience that I'm trying to go after. How, somebody trying to get into this, what's like some ideas, tips that they should look at if you're an MSP of having a strong or at least a good foundation for cybersecurity for their clients?
I used to tell people, Keith, I've got guitars and they all have one string, and I just like pull it down off the shelf and like play that string. It's like blunk, blunk, blunk. I might maybe get a different chord every now and again, but anyways, I say all that to say, I think frameworks, man. Like, there's an interesting aspect of using a framework, whether it be CIS's Center for Internet Security's critical controls, those 18, which is actually 153 safeguards, or whether it be NIST CSF, or if you're in Great Britain, CAF, or NIST 2, NIS 2, or Australia Essential 8, whatever it might be. As you follow that framework, you'll watch a Dunning-Kruger principle play out, which, by the way, Dunning-Kruger is a somewhat debunked myth, or a somewhat debunked way to state that you get to a point early into learning something that you feel like you're very confidently at the top, and you're up there, I know everything and I've got this. I know what a framework is. I understand 10.1. I understand what they're talking about. Totally follow. I even got 13. Like, I got it. And then as you start to move forward and learn more about it, you reach the pit of despair, which is this rapid drop of how much you actually know compared to the overall data and body of knowledge there is to know. Right? And then at some point you reach up and you're now at this point where you're good, right? I think as you go through using a framework, you'll start to realize that MSP, MSSP, security, no security, there is no try, right? Because what you're really speaking towards is this trend that we thought we could build something in technology and not deal with the security. No. Car manufacturers. No. You do not have to do anything about safety testing. We're going to let people sell stuff that bolts on your car that safeties it. No problem. Bullshit. Never work. You have to build it in endemically. So I say that to say that if you think you're an MSP that's never going to have to deal with this, there's never going to be a point in time where you can turn the wrench and not be responsible for the security and safety of what you're turning the wrench on. Nor is there ever going to be a point where you could do security in a vacuum. I spent $7,000 a month to hire an MSSP for me, for my organization, just to watch my 170 employees, just to watch my organization. And when we dealt with a pretty major incident where someone tried to copy our single sign-on domain and bought a sister and started attacking our people, I reached out and I said, hey, how many people have been to this sister domain? And they said 2. I said, well, I'm in a war room with 6. What are you even looking at? And they're like, well, we're only looking at these logs, and we're not looking at... And my point is that people sell security services just like that snake oil salesman. They're like, yeah, I'm an MSSP, and you could never fathom how smart I am at this securitized stuff. And you, like, picture this stupid Wizard of Oz and, like, don't pay attention to the guy behind the curtain. Like, that's all that's actually happening. So you start realizing that the people selling security-only services have no idea what this data's worth. Right? And I'll tell a story for that because I wanted to tell a story. Imagine you've hired me to protect your Lincoln, your 1960s Lincoln that's sitting out in the middle of this really rough neighborhood. And it looks like crap, right? And you say, hey, Matt, take care of this. I might sit out there with a shotgun and a beer and just watch for a little bit. Fine. But if you told me there was $3 million in bearer bonds in the back that are already signed, and that you'd been putting up advertisements for the last 5 days in the area, putting out flyers saying, hey, if you can steal this car, it's yours, millions in it for you, like, I might have to protect it very differently, right? And so there's this understanding that as the risk goes up, the amount of work that I'm going to have to do goes up. And as we start to continue to go down that path, and I've lost my train of thought, but the point is that, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, Keith. I kind of lost my train of thought on that whole Cadillac. I just pictured you sitting out there with the shotgun and I got lost for a minute.
There's a good story going too.
But you asked me a question. Get me back on track here, bud.
No, just from a standpoint of, somebody's trying to, an MSP's trying to get rolling here.
Yeah. So my point though is that as you start going forward and you start understanding there's certain things that are in that IG1, IG2, IG3s in the frameworks, right? Because you're going to step up in levels. As you go to implementing that, you'll start realizing what are those native things that I'm already doing, like asset inventory. Maybe I should just do a little better in the way I manage it, and I've got an asset inventory for them. The MSSP wasn't doing a good job at that. They might have sent an email to you and gone, is this the right asset inventory every month? And you're like, yeah, cool. And you said, like, no, better. So my point was, like, at some point, you can't just practice security in a vacuum and have all that. And at some point, you can't just turn the wrench and not be responsible for security. My argument is you're seeing this convergence of a sorts, where MSPs that are trying to get started are really somewhat backfilling their own commoditization, also dealing with this change of what is security, also dealing with the fact that they're an aggregator that I personally would attack if I was ever bad, Matt, because I would make way more money attacking them than I would attacking their end clients. Slam dunk. Just get them, juicy nut pierced, turn off all security tools, take everything from the clients, right? Like slam dunk, okay? So when you think about that, you have these people in this convergence. So what do you have to do to get started? Start where you are. Follow a framework. Get better every day. Start with you. Do the stuff internally to understand what it takes to secure you. You owe your clients that much at least at a fiduciary level. You should be doing these things at a high level for you. Whether you outsource it, whether you hire somebody else, whether you hire somebody, you should be doing these things. As you do those things, you will find the native things that you can sell your clients. It's amazing. When you start getting good at something, you now understand what it takes to deliver it, what the risk is, what the cost reward is, and you'll start finding those things where you're like, listen, I'm probably not going to be the person to deliver 24/7 SOC. I'll partner with somebody, right? But I'll sell it, I'll make margin on it, and I'll help manage it, and that'll be my value add. So my argument is just start with a framework, walk down it yourself in IG1, right? The IG1s of CIS, in Implementation Group 1, sorry. And then as you do that, start writing down what types of services do I provide my clients that are doing these functions for them. And then if you want to get super fancy, you start asking what are the things they need to be doing in order for this to be true. And that gets into shared responsibility, which goes back to the very beginning of what I think is missing right now is we don't have a lot of that understanding of what all this takes. Let's just go to patching, for example. If you say I'm going to provide patching for a client and they don't leave the machine on and they don't respond to the request to reboot and they don't do the things that you've asked them to do, then they fail, they get pwned, and they go, why did you not protect me? And so you have to start defining that my job is to patch machines that show up in the patch window that we've defined and ensure that we have a high efficacy of that happening. Your job on your side, Mr. and Mrs. Client, is to make sure that you follow the rules, you have a good, healthy patch window, you enforce when people aren't doing it, you provide the governance. And so as you start to define that, you'll get that extra understanding of, oh my gosh, I can't even just deliver this in a vacuum. I need my clients' help on this. They have to tell me when they spin up a new service or I can't do 2.1. They have to tell me before they go to Best Buy. Remember when you had that client go to Best Buy and buy 6 machines? And you're like, why can't I buy 6 machines? This is the answer to that now. Because we have to actually have an onboarding process, and we have things that we're doing that are part of that mechanism that we make sure we track that for you. So anyway, short story is start with a framework. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Like, if you can only get an asset inventory that has these classes in it and this level of capability, great. Document your history as you grow. Like, at some point, you're like, man, I used to do a vertical jump of only 4 inches, and now I'm at 16 and 22. It's a story. You show that you built that capability, which I'll end on this. As that convergence is playing out for you as an MSP, if you are not already protecting yourself and doing those things, then you will show that you did not act reasonably with your own protections for the level of fiduciary responsibility you hold or risk that you hold for your clients. And at some point, that will probably be a self-selected exit of the MSP space. And so start where you are. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And don't be the smart guy in the room. That's it. Go follow a framework and then just try to get better. And as you find bigger and broader stuff to do, get better at that too. I believe in you. So that's my thoughts right now.
That's fantastic. Amazing, Matt. Yeah, I usually ask somebody on my show here, final thoughts, but I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Just you succinctly defined like a few things that they should be doing. So, yeah, thank you so much for being here. Lots of value to the listeners. And again, from a standpoint of, we're not selling, we're solving problems. I've said that before on the show. That's really what you're doing. You're finding out, you're asking questions, being curious about their business, finding out what problems they have or what problems they're not even aware of that are out there.
And some that I don't want to have to teach them about. Some I just want them to trust me that I'm going to help them make adequate decisions on how to deal with it.
That's the best thing you said. Trust me, I'm the expert, right? Prove, going back to it, articulating your value, proving it by telling stories on how you've done it before for companies just like them.
Yep. Feel, felt, found. Another sales technique that's out there.
That's the old school stuff. Yeah. You don't use that, right? Just come.
It's fair.
Yeah.
Did I just show my age, Keith? Did I just say how old I was when I first took any?
I used to use that strategy way back in the day when I was selling. So
that's fair. I digress.
So, hey, Matt, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. Where are you going to be next? I see all those badges. Where are you speaking next? Any podcast that our listeners can tune into to learn more?
As of in 3 minutes, I'm speaking to the Office of National Security, or the National Security Team, I suppose, for, what is it? What's the names, guys? Anyways, doesn't matter. But I'm speaking to them about MSPs and the risk they pose. And then for travel, I leave on Wednesday, and I'll be heading out to Maryland and to Roanoke, Virginia, and then to San Diego, and then back home for 2 days, and then to Toledo, and then over to Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I get around.
You're around
amount here in the next 4 weeks or so.
Tell everybody about the podcast you do here for PAX 8 that they can tune in and learn a little bit more on the security side.
Join Dom Kirby and I on the game. In fact, we've made a revamp of that podcast this year to be more kinesthetic and tactical technical, to get a little more nerdy and in the tools as opposed to more rhetorical. So if you're interested in actually seeing tools and how they work and some of the core principles, and I think this week we're going to be doing a how would I look at your attack surface without knowing you, OSINT gathering, open source intelligence gathering type conversation. So
excellent. Thanks again, Matt. Safe in your travels, and thanks for everything you bring to the MSP community.
Thank you for everything you do, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, good deal. Thanks again. What an incredible podcast with Matt Lee. Just a wealth of knowledge. You heard him. The standpoint is like being able to start somewhere. Prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. Understand what's going on with your clients. A lot of great points there. Before you talk about your security solutions, say to yourself in your mind, who cares? That's what your buyer is saying. They're really kind of wanting you to validate the why behind what you're saying. You have to build that know, like, and trust relationship up. Once you get the trust piece, just like Matt said, you either trust us or you don't to secure your business. Probably the biggest takeaway I took from him is start with practicing on yourself. Get the security solutions in place to protect your business so that way you can actually share as an entrepreneur, business executive on how it can protect your client's business. Your clients most likely are not technical that you're talking to. They may be, but even if they are, understand their business, how they make money, how they lose money. Your job is to really ask good questions to determine if they value cybersecurity, if they want to protect their business. If they do, what level do they want to protect their business? Find out what the ramifications are to their business if they don't do nothing and they have some sort of incident. Join me next week for another Result Selling Framework podcast on selling cybersecurity solutions. I'm going to be joined by Mike Gafrida. He's the president of cybersecurity. We're going to focus more on questions to ask your prospects around cyber and maybe even do some role playing around this. So join us next week as we continue around selling cybersecurity during Cybersecurity Month. Thanks again for tuning in to Result Selling Framework Podcast. We'll see you next time.